Simple question, it's got complicated answer. With that in mind and the sign, stop teaching. Um, what role for you? What role does lesson planning play in language learning?
Um, well, it plays. I mean, it plays an important role. I mean, I would make a distinction between. And it's not an original. It's not my distinction, but between preparing a lesson and being prepared for a lesson.
Mm.
And I think one of the things again that we were trying to inculcate in our trainees was the state of preparedness, that you will go in anticipating what will happen, but not knowing exactly which way it's going to go, but being on the, you're on your tippy toes so that you can just seize the day kind of thing and go with the flow. And that's a lifetime's preparedness, but it's also thinking ahead, thinking, yeah, okay, maybe you're working with a course book, but you'll take the topic of the course book and say, maybe we'll just run with the topic and see if we can get a conversation out of the topic before we go into the course book proper. So how can I generate that, and where is it likely to go, and why might it fall flat, and what would I do in that case? So that kind of planning, if you like, behavior, I think is very important. But I think planning is a good exercise for examined classes and for courses like the CELTA and the Delta. I mean, learning to plan, but knowing when the plans has to be abandoned is equally important. And also providing wiggle room within that plan so that there is, so you allow for possibilities of learner input and engagement, which will may well subvert the plan and send it off in a completely different direction. I mean, this is something that's hard. This is hard to sell to people who are on a course which they think there are measurable outcomes and that's all written in stone what the Delta lessons should look like. But I don't, I think that thinking has moved on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what Delta examiners are looking like, anybody who's examining a class, assessing a class for examination purposes, should be also looking at the teacher's responsiveness, their spontaneity, their ability to deal with the here and now, their relationship with the students, their courtesy, and all these kind of interpersonal factors, not just that they went through the plan with a timing like a Swiss train.
Irrespective of what was actually happening in front of them, right? Wasn't it Angie Mulderez, Leo, who said about responsibility? A teacher's responsibility is his or her responsibility.
Ability.
Right? Yeah. Which I'll always remember that. That was, Scott, we saw you speak. Leo and I were in Barcelona 2 years ago for the conference at IH, and Angie was speaking there and you were speaking there. And I always remember that quote about responsibility. That was very interesting.
And I think you kind of answered the question about what lessons with no problems are not good lessons. And I remember you saying in one of your, I think you were quoting White, that failure to understand leads to learning. So there's this tension. That tension is really important in language learning. And I think it was also White, again, pulling quotes from your talks. I spent the last 5 weeks doing a lot of research on you, Scott. So the driving force for language change is that input is incomprehensible rather than comprehensible. So I think we have the answer to those lessons.
And I would just add, I mean, this notion of unproblematic teaching comes from was how I was trained, and that's late audio lingualism, remember, because everything you did in the classroom was to avoid students making errors. So, you frog march them through the syllabus, you drill them into the ground through fear that they might say something. Of course, then they did, you see, when my students said, "Did you hear Uncle Sue say that?" You can't say that. Somebody might hear you. And so what I didn't understand at that point was this is a brilliant opportunity. Yeah, this is the learners' errors are opportunities; they're not mistakes. And I think that completely flipped me. That realization. I mean, it wasn't on that particular moment in that lesson, but that contributed to this idea that no, if there's no problems, if there's no errors, there's no learning. We've got to push the learners to the point where they don't understand, where they can't produce, and then we help them out. It's that sort of leading up the garden path kind of thing, having a great time doing this activity, but in fact, it's not good enough.